My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why it's reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in the we're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's autocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you would like to be able to. Anyway. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that political coverage. I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody, going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night on the television, I was on a telephone rapidly rising I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why it's reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him in we're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's autocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you would like to be able to. Anyway. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I heading? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that political coverage. I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingersong. Good song. I can't get this at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What? I can't remember.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Had to take a week off. Very exciting week last week. The birth of my son, Brooks. So that had me a little preoccupied. We've had a lot going on, and we are less than 2 weeks out from the midterm election. So there is a lot going on, and we got a lot to talk about. I just watched a little bit of the Pennsylvania Senate debate. So I know that if some of you were watching that, you probably agree with me that was, that was pretty tough to watch. And obviously it's not good for the Democrats. Dr. Oz was already surging in polls before that debate, but man, I think that one was the nail in the coffin in that race. And quite frankly, I don't even think the Republican Senatorial Committee needs to spend any more money there. They need to throw that money behind Blake Masters because that race is gone. Dr. Oz is going to win in Pennsylvania, and they need to get Blake Masters over the finish line. Mitch McConnell needs to swallow his pride, and he needs to get Blake Masters elected. He needs to stop worrying about sitting on his throne and staying in leadership and worry about the country, because that's what's at stake here. Our republic is at stake. And, it's a lot. It's bigger than you and I. It's bigger than Mitch McConnell. It's bigger than Kevin McCarthy. It's bigger than Donald Trump. It's bigger than everybody. Our country is at stake, and we got to get the best people elected, regardless of whether or not we believe they're going to vote for us as leader. So there's that, and brings me to another point, talking about the debate before we get into our first topic. Early voting's been going on in Pennsylvania for like 4 weeks already. And then you have this debate tonight, which is a disaster for Fetterman. And once again, this is another reason why it is irresponsible to continue allowing early voting. If we want to boost turnout in this country for elections, make election. I'm all for it. Either put election day on a weekend or make election day a national holiday and give people the day off from work. If people cannot show up to vote when they don't have work and they have a full day to do so, that's not on the system. That's not on the country. That is on the people themselves. But letting people vote 4 weeks in advance when things like this could occur, we saw it during the presidential election, right? The last debate between Joe Biden and President Trump, where Joe Biden came out and said he wanted to end the fossil fuels industry, and millions of Americans in some of the most critical states had already casted their ballots. You went and you looked back at the Google searches, and it showed right then and there that people searched right after that debate, can I change my vote? So early voting, despite the good intentions of it, causes issues. Should not be allowed. I am strongly against early voting. I believe, maybe we'll try boost turnout, but there's other ways to boost turnout. And I think making Election Day a national holiday, giving people the day off from work, there's no excuse. If you can't take the time to show up and vote on that day, that's on you. And so, like I said, we got a lot going on. Midterm elections coming up, less than 2 weeks. We are 13 days out, I believe, 14 days out. And people are already gearing up for 2024. It looks like, it's pretty certain. Republicans are going to win. The question now is becoming how big are the majorities going to be? And now we're starting to get people talking about 2024 and what's going to happen in 2024, obviously, especially with the presidential ticket. First, there's people, is Joe Biden going to run? Next, who's going to be there for the Republican Party? And the Ides of March are upon us early, as we are already getting a bunch of former Trump loyalists and allies, cabinet members, and in some cases his vice president, openly positioning themselves to make a run, despite the fact that, we are all but certain that Trump is going to run in 2024. Now, I believe the only thing that will stop Donald Trump from running, besides his health, would be if Congress, for some reason, passed a resolution barring him from running for office, which I believe they're going to try and do. And I think that's something people need to pay attention to, because I believe Merrick Garland is going to get desperate. They are going to do whatever they can to stop Trump. And I believe he is going to get indicted. And I think there are going to be many, not just Democrats. I think there's going to be a lot of Republicans that see this as their chance to finally get rid of Trump, willing to sign a resolution that bars him from running for office. But other than that, I can't see any reason why he wouldn't run. But you have people gearing up. Obviously, a lot of chatter about Ron DeSantis in Florida. I'm going to talk about him in a second. First, I want to show you a little clip about the dissensions in the ranks. Here is the great Paul McCarthy, and I say great with a lot of gibberish here. So, not gibberish. I say great, and I'm being very sarcastic. But here is what Paul Ryan, let me find the video. Oh, I got to add it on here. Find the video. Paul Ryan spoke today about Trump 2024, and listen to what Paul Ryan had to say, because there's a lot to digest here.
Is Donald Trump electable in 2024, bearing in mind that you have a history with Mr. Trump?
Yeah, bear in mind, I do have everybody knows our feelings toward each other, I guess I'd say. My point is, we're going to want to win so badly. We're going to want to beat Biden and the Democrats in 2024 that we won't nominate Trump because we want to win. The new swing voter in American politics is the suburban voter. And it's really clear the suburban voter doesn't like Trump, but they like Republicans. So I think anybody not named Trump, I think, is so much more likely to win the White House for us. And it's sort of like what the Democrats did. They went from Dean to John Kerry in 2004. They went from Bernie to Hillary in 2016. They went from Bernie and Elizabeth Warren to Joe Biden to win in 2020. I think the same thing's going to be for us. We're going to want to win the White House so badly and beat the Democrats. And we know we're so much more likely to lose with Trump because of the fact that he's not popular with suburban voters, that we're going to want to win. And that's why I think we got a great stable of candidates, any of whom are really capable of not just getting the nomination, but winning the general election.
Are you a DeSantis guy?
I like all of them. Look, I'm not one of these things. I like Ron. I like Glenn Youngkin. I like Mike Pompeo, Nikki Haley.
All right. There's a lot to digest there. First of all, who is Paul Ryan talking about when he says we are not going to nominate Donald Trump? Because according to all the polls, Donald Trump is about 60, 70% of the choice of GOP voters, probably going to be even higher. So when he's saying we, what he's saying is the GOP brass is going to do whatever they can to stop Donald Trump from running again. Okay? Just like I just talked about how I believe if Merrick Garland indicts Donald Trump, they're going to seize an opportunity in their minds to bar him from running again. Don't think that is beneath them. Just because they're Republicans, they're not going to do this. They don't care that Trump gave them a historic victory in 2016 and, in my opinion, saved the Republican Party. Because if Donald Trump had lost, the GOP, you'd have Hillary Clinton right now. She would be marching. She would be in her second term, and things would be a lot different. Donald Trump took the Republican Party and added people to it who would never in their life think of voting Republican. Next, Paul Ryan is full of crap there. Everything Paul Ryan just said there is a lie. It's completely false. And I'm going to get my little GIF up here because I like it. Everything Paul Ryan just said is BS. The suburban voter is not the largest swing voter in America. They were in the 1990s and the 1980s, but they are not anymore. Anybody with half a brain that isn't listening to the garbage coming out of Frank Luntz's mouth knows this. The largest growing portion of the electorate in the United States is the working class. Working class Latinos, working class whites, in the highest cases, working class Latinos, but the working class is the largest growing portion of the electorate. What Paul Ryan wants to do, he's trying to lie to you and tell you it's suburbanites. They are a shrinking minority. White, educated, upper middle class suburbanites are a shrinking part of the electorate. And there is Paul Ryan telling you, lying to you and saying they're the biggest part and that we need to cater to them. If the Republican Party caters to them, the Republican Party will cease to exist. We will be a permanent minority because that is not the future of the country. Look, we talked about this on this show. The demographics of the country do not support anything that Paul Ryan just said. He wishes that were the case because people like Paul Ryan, Republican establishment hacks like Paul Ryan, Frank Lutz, Karl Rove, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, these people want that to be the case. They do not want to be the party of the working class. They don't like these people. They would never hang out with these people in real life. They would not go to these people's homes. They would not associate with these people. They look down on these people. So it's only natural that they don't want a party that caters to them. They want to stick with their country club corporate version of the Republican Party. That party has no Big Ten appeal in a changing United States and will only become weaker and weaker. And even another part of what he said that was false is that Trump can't win suburbanites. Because if you look at the polling right now, Trump is polling better than he ever has with suburban voters and with independents. So everything Paul Ryan said in that statement is bullcrap. But that's what the establishment thinks. That's what they want you to believe. They're going to parrot it. The media is going to parrot it because the media doesn't want Donald Trump. So you're going to have the Republican establishment working in concert with the media to convince you that everything Paul Ryan just said is true. When in reality, the data, the polling, even from the leftist pollsters, tells you the complete opposite is true. Suburbanites are a shrinking portion of the electorate. Working class is the future. Populism is the future. If the GOP leaders cannot see this, they will destroy our party and they will destroy our republic because the Democrats will take complete and total control, because that is the end game for the Democrats. And we're going to talk about that a little later in the show when we talk about Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. The Democrats are looking for a future where there's a two-party system. Max Boot on Twitter the other day said if Republicans win, it's literally the death of democracy. So the left, who champions themselves as defenders of democracy, their version of democracy is a nation where one side has complete and total control. And if the other side were to win, democracy's over. That's not democracy. That's fascism. That's a dictatorship. Right? And so one of the chief challengers stepping up, it looks like, is Trump's former vice president, Mike Pence. And Mike Pence made it pretty obvious. He spoke to a think tank, and he said, when they asked him, he spoke at Georgetown University, and he was asked whether he would vote for Trump if Trump becomes the Republican nominee in 2024. He said, and I quote, "Well, there might be somebody else I'd prefer more. I'll keep you posted." Mike Pence also said, "Our movement cannot forsake the foundational commitment that we have security to limited government, to liberty, and to life. But nor can we allow our movement to be led astray by the siren song of unprincipled populism." These people don't get it. If Mike Pence runs in 2024, he will be destroyed. He might be like Kamala Harris and not even make it to Iowa. People like Mike Pence represent an old brand of republicanism. What is unprincipled populism? What's unprincipled about populism, Mike? Because then he went to go and talk on and say how his version, basically he went on to talk about how isolationism is bad and that basically we need to go toe-to-toe with Russia over Ukraine. So Mike Pence thinks populists are unprincipled because they don't want a nuclear war, because they don't want to send your sons, your daughters to fight and die in another war that, I'm sorry to say, because the media and the left say you're crazy, is we have no interest in. It's a European issue. Me saying that is not making me a Putin apologist. It's the truth. What interest does the United States have in that war? Other than now that Ukraine has all of our money and all of our weapons. Mike Pence will not connect. If you think that somebody who speaks like that is going to bring in the voters that Trump brought into the Republican Party, then this party's lost. If he were to get nominated, he would lose in an electoral landslide, because populism is what brought people to the Trump's Republican Party. That is what brought working class Latinos, working class America, auto workers, union workers. They came to the Republican Party for the first time ever and gave Trump a historic victory because of populism. They took populism, which can also be liberal. There's liberal populism and there's conservative populism. The Republican Party had never embraced populism because, just like Paul Ryan, which we just talked about, they have always wanted to be the country club elitists. They don't like the working class. But guess what, guys? The upper middle class, the white working suburban voters are disappearing. You can't win. It's not 1994. You cannot keep playing the same card like that and expect things to change. All right? So this is a serious problem. And then, so there's Mike Pence. But now the biggest threat that we have coming up against us is Ron DeSantis. And I wanted to toe this issue carefully because I want to say this flat out. I like Ron DeSantis. I appreciate everything he's done. I appreciate how he pushes back against the left. But the people telling Ron DeSantis to challenge Trump in 2024 do not have Ron DeSantis' best interests at heart. They're not doing it because they really want to help Ron. They're doing it because they want to destroy Trump. And all you have to do is look at the people who are funding and telling Ron to do it. Paul Ryan, Jeb Bush, all those people, the McCains. Those are the people pushing Ron DeSantis to do it. And it's, like I said, it's not because they really like Ron DeSantis. It's because they think if Ron runs, there's a chance he might be able to topple Trump. All right? But here's the problem. Who has gone toe-to-toe with Trump and come out ahead? I don't want to see Ron ruin his political career because I believe Ron has a bright future. I believe Ron will be in the White House one day. But if he goes and takes on Trump, it will destroy his political future, just like it destroyed Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz will never be president because of his fight against Donald Trump. And that's not to say I don't like Ted Cruz or that I think his policies are bad. But you saw what Trump did. Lying Ted. There's no way Ron DeSantis can beat Trump in a primary by playing patty cake with him. He'd have to draw a clear distinction between himself and Trump. And to do that, he would have to attack Trump. And when Trump gets attacked, he is going to push back harder and harder than before. And he is going to destroy Ron. And then if Ron loses, he's not coming back in 2028. His time will be up. However, if he waits his turn, which I think he would be a good vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. Why can't Trump serve for 4 years, have Ron DeSantis as his vice president, and then we could skate into 8 years of Ron DeSantis? To me, that's much more appealing than pitting the two against each other in 2024. 12 years of Republican power. Or do you want to destroy the party in 2024 with infighting? See, the GOP establishment doesn't care. Because in their eyes, they would rather destroy the party, not win, than become the party of blue-collar, working-class Americans. They would rather do that than see America first and populism prosper. Mike Pence said it, and the rest of them believe it. And if you think for a second that the words that came out of Paul Ryan's mouth are not the same thoughts that are in Kevin McCarthy's head, you're lying to yourself. I know, I made a tweet about this last week. I know for a fact there are numerous publicly avowed Trump-supporting, currently elected Congress people and candidates for Congress who, when they go out and they give speeches, they say they support Donald Trump. But in private, they are already telling donors that they believe the time has come that Ron DeSantis is obviously the choice for 2024. So like I said, Trump needs to be careful because they're going to use Trump and they're going to milk him for his money so that they can win this time, but they are not going to give him they're not just going to hand him the nomination in 2024. And the people he thinks are his friends today are going to prove that they were never his friends. And that's what we're up against here. So we got a lot going on. And I just don't want to see Ron DeSantis destroy himself because never Trump Republicans would rather take a chance and get rid of Donald Trump. Sorry, I'm looking at my Facebook feed trying to see if the video's working, but it's not working on Facebook. Man, I can't ever get anything working all at once, right? Because somebody just messaged me like, oh, where's your video on Facebook? So the next thing that we got to talk about that goes along with this is what happened. Sorry, I guess it's not working on Facebook. I don't know. Well, it's working on YouTube. So here we go. So my next point is, look at what we're up against. Like I said, the Democrats want complete and total control, and nothing is more apparent. That is their end game than what's going on with Elon Musk and Twitter. All right. So news came out this week that the Biden administration was considering blocking Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter over national security concerns. And sorry, let me just send this link to somebody. So the Biden administration, basically, because Elon Musk came out last week and said, I might take off, he got in an argument. He got in an argument with Ukrainian officials over, he wanted peace, basically. He wanted peace, and one of the Ukrainian politicians came up and basically attacked him. And he said, well, maybe I'll just take away Starlink since I'm giving it to you for free and my company's losing millions of dollars. And then the Biden admin now says, well, that might be a reason where we have to block his Twitter deal. That's not what this is about. The Democrats are gearing up. They know they're going to lose in November. But they want total control, okay? That is their end game. That is where we are headed. They've made it clear that their version of democracy, like I said, is a country or a nation where only one side is in control and decides what is approved and what isn't approved. But that's not democracy. That's fascism. They're projectionists. Everything the Democrats are guilty themselves of, they accuse others of being and doing. And so Elon Musk wants to come in and buy Twitter. And they can't have that because by censoring people on Twitter, they are controlling the narrative. They are deciding, because they're working in cohorts with Twitter. We have proof. I mean, we have a lawsuit revealed that big tech and the federal government were in cahoots. The Biden administration was calling Facebook, was calling Twitter, telling them about certain accounts and posts to take down. All right? It's proof. We know this as a fact. So they don't want Elon Musk to control Twitter because they want to silence free thought. They want to stifle conversation and free thought, and they don't want people to think critically. They want people to hear one side of the argument. They decide what is science. They decide what is and what isn't misinformation. And that's what everybody agrees to. That is what society has to accept. So let me show you what Tucker had to say about it, because Tucker had a great point on this. So let's listen to what Tucker had to say.
Elon Musk will soon own Twitter, maybe within the next week. And for the Biden administration, this is an existential problem. They cannot tolerate a free and open internet. Censorship is the only thing that allows neoliberal leaders to stay in power. They can't have a debate. They have to shut you down. And so the Biden administration is now finding ways to stop Elon Musk, not to argue against his position, but to crush him with the power of the federal government. They're not even pretending there's a legal basis for doing that. They don't have to. Bloomberg reports that, quote, Biden administration officials are discussing whether the U.S. should subject some of Musk's ventures to national security reviews, including the deal for Twitter and SpaceX's Starlink satellite network. On what grounds, you ask? Well, according to Bloomberg, quote, U.S. officials have grown uncomfortable over Musk's recent threat to stop supplying the Starlink satellite service to Ukraine, for free, by the way. They're also concerned by his plans to buy Twitter with a group of foreign investors, end quote. Oh, foreign investors. Every publicly, every publicly held company in this nation is owned in part by foreign investors. Every single one. And of course, thousands, tens of thousands of acres of U.S. farmland are owned by the Communist Chinese government. But because apparently Elon Musk plans to form some sort of partnership with, quote, foreign investors, maybe the Saudis, he needs a national security review. Don't fall for it. This is about censorship and Elon Musk's promise to end censorship, which is the single worst thing that could happen to the Biden administration, to the Democratic Party, and to the people currently running the country into the ground. They can't have free speech.
Exactly. Think about it. By limiting what can be said on social media, because let's face it, we've come to a point in time where social media is where a lot of people get their information from. I just saw a poll saying about like over 50 to 60% of adults say they get their information, their news from TikTok. So social media has a huge influence on what people think and what people believe. And by controlling the flow of information on those platforms, you can effectively stifle differing opinions. You're deciding what is and what isn't truth, okay? And think about it. Think about all the stories that were censored during the COVID, right? So we said, we now know there really was no science for masking. But if you had said that a year and a half ago, you would have been banned from Facebook, banned from Twitter. Last year, they told us if you get the COVID shot, you will not catch the virus. If you said otherwise on Facebook and Twitter, you were labeled as spreading misinformation. You were shunned. And all the people, the COVID fearmongers, said you were a loose cannon, a conspiracy theorist. We now know that's true. The science never supported school lockdowns. But if you went on there talking about school lockdowns and saying schools should be open or that masks don't work, you were stifled. And people accepted that because Twitter told you it was misinformation, that it was true. That indeed was misinformation. So this is what is the problem. They can't have Elon Musk take over Twitter because Elon Musk has vowed that he is going to make it a free speech network. He basically said, I'm going to allow everybody all these opinions as long as it doesn't break the law. This scares the hell out of the Biden administration and the regime and the radical left. Because when the truth comes out, when Republicans and conservatives get to tell their side of the story, their stance on the issues, the polling overwhelmingly shows that people agree with it. That's why they want to get rid of that information. That's why they don't want you to be able to say that. So much so that ABC News posted this insane article lamenting that mass layoffs at Twitter could cripple content moderation. Here's a quote. The experience of a typical user could change significantly, noting the possible rise of harassment and other forms of corrosive discourse. What do they mean? What is corrosive discourse? I'll tell you what they mean by corrosive discourse. They mean somebody saying, if you get vaccinated, you could still get COVID. They would have considered that corrosive discourse. They mean somebody saying that a cloth mask doesn't stop the spread of COVID, that you shouldn't have to wear it. That would have been corrosive discourse. They mean somebody saying, wait a minute, how could Donald Trump have won almost every bellwether county in the country, got 10 million more votes than he did in 2016, and lost the election? Why did the votes stop counting at 4 a.m.? That is corrosive discourse. So corrosive discourse is simply information they disagree with. They went on to this. Cuts to the content moderation workforce will align with statements made by Musk in recent months about his commitment to the principle of free speech, suggesting that Twitter should permit all speech that stops short of violating the law. My God, The nerve of Elon Musk to have a commitment to free speech. Do you know where else there's a commitment to free speech? In the U.S. Constitution. It's the First Amendment of our Constitution. Every American should have a commitment to free speech. Here you have ABC News lamenting that Elon Musk believes in free speech. Why? Because free speech, civil discourse, is a threat to their power and their control. They are now the ones who decide what is and what isn't truth. And then, here we go. Goes on to say even more. If there's more harassment and other forms of toxic speech, if there is more misinformation and disinformation, right there. That's what this is about. This is about them determining what is and what isn't misinformation. Okay? That's what they care about. The science, right? We were told this is the science, this is the science, this is science. Now we find out that the science was never the actual science to begin with. And we know from what we discussed a couple weeks ago, the drug companies knew it wasn't the science either. Pfizer admitted in a UK court, or a European Union court or hearing, that they never knew. They never tested to see if the vaccinated could get COVID or spread COVID. But yet they told you the science said that vaccinated people could not get COVID and could not spread the virus. They have lied under using the term science, labeling everyone else as spreading misinformation. How many conspiracy theories have come true in the last year alone? How many? Quite a bit. And that's going to lead me into the next issue that we face, because this is important. There has to be an open communication of ideas in a democracy for a democracy to survive. And like I said, the left is fully content. They want pure, unabated power. And it's time for the GOP to wake up to the nature of their opponents. These people, you can't work with them. They don't like you. All right? And even some of their own they go against. Because if you saw the Squad just said, yesterday they sent a letter to Joe Biden saying that they needed, so the 30 progressive liberal Democrats sent a letter to Joe Biden calling on him to change his strategy in Ukraine, saying, we don't want to spend any more money. You need to talk with Russia and work towards peace. Immediately, the media, the other Democrats, the other neocons and the warmongers and the Ukraine war groupies came out and attacked them. 24 hours later, guess what? They retracted it and they blamed it on a low-level staffer. I hope they learned a lesson. This is something that even those on the left that agree with what the Biden administration has done, that agree with censorship, that agree with all this stuff, have to understand. Eventually, you are only one different opinion away from the mob turning on you. Today, you're on the side of the mob, but for one time, when you dare to think for yourself and you dare to speak up, you then become the target of the mob. And this is where the danger lies. This is how totalitarians take power. This is what they do after they consolidate power. Look at what happened in China. Mao Zedong. He rose to power. The first thing he did was kill many of the people who helped him rise to power. So just because you're on the right side of the regime today doesn't mean you're always going to be there. And if you dare step out of line, they are going to make sure you are publicly humiliated and that you must capitulate. Now, next point. Something big happened this week that I want to discuss. The the CDC voted to add the COVID vaccination to their list of recommended vaccines. And many Republicans haven't touched this. The ones that have, most of them have been governors, or gubernatorial candidates. Carrie Lake spoke up. Doug Mastriano issued a statement immediately after. And Ron DeSantis spoke up. Lee Zeldin has spoken up. But our leaders in Congress, most of them have remained silent about this. And what we are learning more and more about this vaccine raises a lot of questions. This could go down as one of the biggest, I'm going to call it, crimes against humanity that has ever happened. People are dying because of this vaccine, specifically young people. And what we now know about COVID is that the virus does not pose a serious threat to young people or adolescents. What does pose a serious threat now is what we're learning about the side effects. Myocarditis. In fact, look at this. COVID hospitalizations since the pandemic began. The bottom line, all the way at the bottom, that's basically on the axis, is less than 18 years old. Look at that. Almost none have been hospitalized less than 18 years old. Since the COVID pandemic began, there have only been 1,314 children who have died with COVID, a mortality rate of 0.002%. 95% of those had severe comorbidities. So the actual rate for healthy children is even less. It's 0.001%. And a lot of these people are saying, well, you need to take the vaccine because taking the vaccine far outweighs the risks of COVID. That's not true in the case of younger people. The risk to younger people of dying is 0.001%. Since the COVID vaccine has been rolled out, there was a chart that was posted. I want to show it to you because somebody posted this out and the fact checkers went for it. So, according to 2021, these people had 11,000 cases of myocarditis. This chart was posted. The fact checkers went for it. Now, the chart was wrong, but here's the problem. Since 1991, okay, most of the myocarditis and pericarditis reports to VAERS were made after the U.S. COVID vaccination program began. So the CDC confirmed that's from 1990 to November 2021, there were 2,337 reports of myocarditis. Of those, 1,969 were people 30 and younger who received the COVID vaccine. That's 43%. So even though it wasn't the 11,000, when people report on VAERS, the CDC has to investigate, and then they decide whether or not it's a legitimate case of myocarditis or not. Okay? And they found out, so 43% of the people since 1990 that have reported myocarditis after getting the vaccine reported it after getting the COVID vaccine. That is not a coincidence. Why would you mandate a medicine onto children to fight a virus that does not pose a significant risk to them? Once again, look at the COVID deaths by age. From 2020 to 2022, 1,314 between the ages of 0 and 17 died from COVID. 95% of those had serious comorbidities. From 18 to 29 years old, it was 6,625. Compare that with the other age groups. You're forcing a vaccine on people that offers them no benefit. Even further, it was found out based on a study from the EU that basically for every 500 children that are hospitalized, at least 500 children are hospitalized for every life the vaccine saves. So every one life the COVID vaccine saves, 500 adolescents and youth are hospitalized because of adverse effects to the vaccine. So the pros do not outweigh the cons, like they're saying. Make no mistake about this. This is for drug companies. This is Big Pharma's money, because there's a couple reasons they want to do this, and that's what we're going to get into, why the CDC did this. They know there are serious problems with the COVID vaccine. They know that myocarditis rates are going up, that people are dying, young people are dying. Look at the excess deaths since the vaccine rollout began. And excess mortality is a term used in epidemiology and public health that refers to the number of deaths from all causes during a crisis above and beyond what we would have expected to see under normal circumstances. So these are excess deaths that did not occur because of COVID. Because we get the reported COVID deaths, and then they look at the additional deaths. So we get the reported. Now, some people are saying that some of these excess deaths could have been COVID that wasn't caught. I don't buy that for a second, because they're actually saying people died of COVID in an extremely liberal way. They're basically saying everyone dies of COVID. Not, you're dying with COVID, but they say it was because of COVID. There's a serious problem here. Look at in September 2020 alone, there were 18,000 excess deaths of people between the ages of 0 and 24. Look at how much this chart skyrockets since the vaccine rollout began. Listen, you can say what you want about coincidence. The fact checkers say there's no proof or science that says this is because of the vaccine. Okay, maybe there isn't enough. How about we study it before we mandate it to children? How about we get to the bottom of it? How about we say, wait a minute, there might be a problem here. Let's do more research, more studies to determine if there is a problem before we force children to take this to go to school. That would be the responsible thing to do. But that's not what Big Pharma is interested in. Big Pharma is interested in making money. And in this case, shielding themselves from liability. Senator Robert Kennedy, let's look at RFK Jr. talked about why the CDC put this on the childhood vaccine schedule. Listen to this.
So they're never going to market a vaccine, allow people access to a vaccine, an approved vaccine, without getting liability protection. Now, the emergency use authorization vaccines have liability protection under the PrEP Act and the CARES Act. So as long as you take an emergency use, you can't sue them. Once they get approved, now you can sue them, unless they can get it recommended for children.
What?
Because all vaccines that are recommended, officially recommended for children, get liability protection, even if an adult gets that vaccine. That's why they're going after kids. They know this is going to kill and injure a huge number of children, but they need to do it for the liability protection.
So listen to that. By putting it on the childhood vaccination record, they're actually shielding the drug companies from being sued due to the adverse effects. And make no mistake about it, have you seen the commercials about myocarditis on the TV run by Moderna and Pfizer? They know there's issues with this vaccine. They don't want to be sued. They need this to be on the thing, because what happens, according to the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, it created the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, a no-fault alternative to the traditional tort system. It provides compensation to the people found to be injured by certain vaccines. So once a vaccine gets approved by the CDC and put on the recommended child things, companies are no longer liable. the government and the taxpayers pay out the penalties. That's why they wanted this on the childhood vaccination record. They know they're going to be sued. So much so, let's look at this. Let me find you this chart. They have actually allotted more money. The Biden administration, the CDC, let me find the chart. I'm trying to find it. Hold on, give me a second. Has actually requested $10 billion more for VAERS in the 2023 budget, because they're expecting there to be lawsuits and claims about the vaccine killing people. They're already expecting it. That's why they're asking for $10 billion more to be included into the budget. A $10 billion more increase. I believe it's $10 billion. It might be $10 million. Let me try and find it because I don't want to misquote it. But either way, they're asking for tons more money. Here it is. Oh, wait. They're asking for tons more money to go into the VICP system because they are expecting to pay out claims, because they know people are dying from the vaccine. Here it is. So for the fiscal year, the DOJ requests $31.7 million, an increase of $10 million over the fiscal year 2020 Biden's budget. Let me get this for you so I can show it to you. So they are requesting $10 million more in 2023. They know there's going to be claims because they know the vaccine's killing people, but now the drug companies are not liable. If you don't think this is Big Pharma telling politicians, we're not going to donate to your campaigns unless you do this, you're out of your mind. They are putting Big Pharma executives, their rich corporate buddies, over the lives of your children. Because anybody with a brain would look at the data and realize something is wrong here, and we should not mandate it until we get to the bottom of what is wrong. That's what a responsible person would do. That's what a responsible government would do. But that's not what ours is doing. And too many Republicans are silent. These are our nation's children. If you do not have the guts to stand up and speak out, and to demand something be done to stop this, you don't deserve to be elected Democrat or Republican. Because I don't really care. I want people in government that are going to work for those they represent. I didn't run for office because I wanted to be, I didn't run for the Republican Party. I ran for the American people. And we need elected leaders who believe the American people and their constituents are worth more than loyalty to any party, to any political donor, to any lobbyist, to any corporation. We're now talking about the lives of children. And the CDC came out and attacked Tucker Carlson for criticizing this move. They fact-checked him and said, well, it's only a recommended thing. Tucker Carlson fired back. He showed them. In a state like Virginia, it is actually written into Virginia law that they must abide by the recommended CDC vaccine schedule. So in many, and they're not the only state, there's dozens of states that have that same type of law. So you could sit here and say it's only a recommendation, but in many cases, it's not. They know once it goes on that vaccination schedule and they recommend it for children that many states are going to follow suit and they're going to have no choice and kids are going to be forced to get this, even though they know something is wrong. And I am by no means an anti-vaxxer against vaccines. I believe, I don't want people getting polio and dying, but why do you continue to give them something where it's wrong? I want to show you a clip by Dr. Robert Malone, who helped develop this vaccine. Listen to what Dr. Malone had to say.
You're taking the
hold
on. Just radical, talk about radical. The radical step that an emergency use authorized product, and Carrie Lake is exactly right, that makes it an experimental product, will be recommended for administration to children down to age 5 based on basically a 300-person child bridging study that they call effectiveness, but all it is showing that the immune response is similar in children to this new booster to what it was previously with the first and second jabs, and a safety database of 1,300 young children. And that is statistically powered to detect adverse events that are up to 1 in 400 in frequency. In other words, they would never detect a myocarditis event with such a small sample size because the incidence of myocarditis in young boys is in the range of 1 in 1,200 to 1 in 1,500.
So they're running studies and saying there's no incidence of widespread myocarditis, but their sample sizes and their study and their control groups are too small to pick up on it. And they know this, but they're still telling you that there's no evidence of it. They know they are intentionally misleading you. Why are they doing this? Power, political donations, Big Pharma money. But people must speak up. I don't care, like I said, if you are a Democrat or Republican, if you fail to speak up about this issue, you don't deserve to be in office. There's a serious problem here. And listen, let's say they do the necessary studies and they find out that the vaccine isn't causing the myocarditis and that the excess deaths are because of something else. Great. Now we can add the vaccine to the schedule. But why would you add it to the childhood schedule before you know the full implications of that decision? That's irresponsible. No doctor would do that. If a doctor was going to give you a treatment that might kill you, he's going to give you the pros and cons. He's going to weigh the pros and cons. Why would we give this to kids before we know what the true side effects are? Why not wait to find out? It's better to be safe than sorry when we're talking about the lives of our children. And it's time for people to speak up because, like I said, the truth is eventually going to come out. And this could go down as one of the worst acts by governments ever against their citizens. Knowingly giving your citizens a vaccine that may be killing them is evil. Especially now, let's look at COVID lethality. So when COVID first broke out in mid-2020, it was more, for most age groups, it was deadlier than the seasonal flu. However, it was never deadlier than the seasonal flu for those 24 and under. So even when COVID was at its worst, it was still equivalent to the seasonal flu for those 24 and under. Now, as the variants, we've gotten more variants and the lethality has kind of gone down because every time a virus mutates, it might become more infectious, but it does lose the lethality. It is now no more deadly than the seasonal flu for those 50 and under. It's no more severe. It's actually less severe than the seasonal flu for those 50 and under. It's 0.2 times less than the seasonal flu for those under 21. So, and even as you get in the older age brackets now, the gap is a lot narrower. And this is from the Office of National Statistics in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom. So I just don't see any good reason for the government to be forcing this on children when they know there are likely problems. That to me is pure evil, and any politician who won't speak up because they're worried about losing political donations, which, by the way, let me show you something, because if you think this is going to change when Republicans take power, I got words for you. It's not going to change unless we get new leaders, because this is the McCarthy Victory Fund. The fourth biggest donor to the McCarthy Victory Fund is the pharmaceutical companies. That's why Kevin McCarthy isn't speaking up about this decision. That's why the rest of Republican leadership isn't speaking up about this decision. People like Thomas Massie are, because he's a leader. He's interested in doing what's right. He's not interested in the donations coming from the pharmaceutical companies. So if you think just because Republicans are going to win the House in November that this is going to change, you're wrong. You're mistaken. And I will say this before we get into question and answers, if anyone has questions or answers. I do want to get into my biggest L for the week. But I will say this. I've taken a lot of heat for criticizing McCarthy and the establishment since, I lost the primary. I've gone against them, and I believe I have a reason to. We did get a little in depth in my first show, but we could talk more about it. But I'm doing it because I'm worried about this country. We are at a point in our nation's history where history is going to have demanded upon us great leadership. And right now, the Republican Party is not, in my opinion, led by those who are up to the task that history demands. They have shown no willingness to push back against Merrick Garland as his Gestapo raids the houses of political adversaries. McCarthy came out last week and said, no impeachment of Joe Biden. And I said this, I don't believe impeachment should be taken lightly. But Joe Biden, they impeached Donald Trump, they said, for withholding aid to Ukraine. And then Joe Biden, the Saudi government came out, in that case, the Ukrainian government, Vladimir Zelensky, actually came to Trump's defense and said, no, there was no quid pro quo, he didn't blackmail me. In Joe Biden's case, the Saudi government came out and said Joe Biden did try to blackmail us. He threatened to withhold weapons that were agreed upon unless we agree to halt oil production cuts until after the elections. That was an impeachable offense 2 years ago. Republicans are now saying we're not interested in playing tick for tack. You know what? I usually am not interested in playing for tick for tack, but this isn't the old Democratic Party. The people controlling the Democratic Party right now have decided the rules no longer apply to them. They're planning to ignore a Supreme Court of the United States ruling in Pennsylvania that said Pennsylvania cannot count undated mail-in ballots. The Attorney General, the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania said, we're not going to listen. The elections official said, we're not even going to listen to the Supreme Court. So you have a Democratic Party that has now decided the rules no longer apply to them. If we don't show them that we are willing to hit back just as hard as they do, they are going to get more and more aggressive. And the next time they're in power, they're going to be worse than they are now. We need to show them that, yes, we are willing to impeach you just like you did to us. And then maybe they'll realize, well, now every Democratic president is up to this, and they're going to stop doing what they're doing. But if we show them we're not willing to punch back just as hard, they're going to become more emboldened. And it's unacceptable for Republicans like Nancy Mace and McCarthy to say, well, we're not going to do an impeachment. Why haven't they vowed to impeach Merrick Garland? Merrick Garland is running the FBI like Joe Biden's stormtroopers. He has shown no ability to abide by the rule of law, no ability to be objective. He is simply doing the dirty work of the Biden regime, and many Republicans are silent about it. This man should be impeached on day one, no ifs, ands, or buts. He is totally unqualified for the position which he holds, and he must not be allowed to stay in power. Every single elected Republican and those that are campaigning right now should be willing to publicly sign their intent to impeach Merrick Garland on day one. That's why I'm critical of the establishment. That's why I am harsh on Ronnie McDaniel, Kevin McCarthy, Elise Stefanik, and Mitch McConnell, because we need leadership that is up to the moment. And right now, we don't have it. You cannot, I say this all the time, and I'm going to say it again. You cannot defeat the swamp if your leadership is beholden to the swamp. So, our other statement, we're going to get to our biggest L of the week, and we are going to go to my favorite person. I got to listen to this clip too, and it's going to bother me. Let's listen to what Hillary Clinton had to say today. We talked about the 2024 election. The great Hillary Clinton crawled out from the gutter she was in, and sure enough, she's already denying future elections, but when she does it, it's okay. Let's hear what Hillary had to say.
Hello, Zables. I'm here to highlight something that is keeping me up at night. And I know this group really understands what I'm about to say. I know we're all focused on the 2022 midterm elections, and they are incredibly important. But we also have to look ahead, because you know what? Our opponents certainly are. Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. And they're not making a secret of it. The right-wing controlled Supreme Court may be poised to rule on giving state legislatures, yes, you heard me that correctly, state legislatures the power to overturn presidential elections. Just think, if that happens, the 2024 presidential election could be decided not by the popular vote or even by the anachronistic electoral college, but by state legislatures. Many.
Okay. I can't listen to her anymore, but she's this week's biggest L, because for 2 years now, we've heard the Democrats and the media say, election deniers, you are insurrectionists, you're a threat to democracy. Like I said earlier, the Democrats are the masters of projection. They accuse others of what they themselves are doing. Hillary Clinton is, by her own definition, she's an election denier. She's an insurrection in an election that hasn't even happened yet. You know why she's that? Because Democrats are trying to steal elections. Like I said with Pennsylvania. Why would they be counting ballots without a date on them when the law specifically says absentee ballots, mail-in ballots must be signed and dated? And the United States Supreme Court issued a ruling saying you cannot count ballots that do not have the date. So what reason would Pennsylvania have to ignore that ruling? Because they're trying to change an election. The Democrats, why did Democrats change voting laws unilaterally in most cases in Pennsylvania? The governor did it. When the Pennsylvania state constitution said only the legislature could change the manner of voting. In their case, the governor changed it and made it full mail-in balloting. Why did they do this? Why did many of the most influential states do this? Because they wanted unsolicited mail-in balloting, because they know it increases the chance of fraud. Unkempt voter rolls, lack of transparency over the process, chain of custody concerns, all corrupt the process in their favor. But then the Democrats turn around and say, wait a minute, you guys are the election deniers. How dare you ask questions? What were the American people asking? And let's cut through the bullcrap. Nobody ever asked Mike Pence to overturn the 2020 election. Complete bullcrap when people say that. Mike Pence was asked to do one thing: hold off on certifying the election to give the states enough time to go back and look at some of the obvious and blatant irregularities that people saw. How many videos do we have of voting centers boarding up windows? Of these drop boxes in the middle of the night where tens of thousands of ballots are being dropped off? In Atlanta, where poll workers were told to go home for the rest of the night, that no more counting would be done, and then we have security footage showing counting going on all night after everyone was told that counting would stop. The American people deserve to have confidence in their elections, especially in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetimes. But the Democrats said you were an election denier if you asked any questions. And that goes back to Elon Musk Twitter, right? Free speech. It's approved speech to them, not free speech. Democracy to them has a different meaning than democracy that we were taught about. To the left, democracy has come to mean whatever their side says and the rules they decide to play by. And when the other side wins or says something they don't like, that's a threat to democracy. That's fascism. That's how totalitarian and dictators work. And they have the luxury of the media parroting all of their nonsense. So Hillary Clinton is my biggest L. before we go, I don't know how many people are still watching, but if you have any questions for me, I would love to take your questions. Usually we have a couple people that have some questions and we do some talking. So if anybody has any questions before we go, fire away. I see we got some people on YouTube still and some people on Facebook. So we can take that. Otherwise, we'll sign off and we'll come back next week, which will be a week until Election Day. Oh, I see a question from Steve. How long before we sue employers for making us prove we had the jabs? Well, so like I said, the problem is going to be, you saw what just happened in New York today, which was big. The New York Supreme Court ruled that the state violated workers' rights when they fired people for not getting vaccinated, because the court themselves said, and I quote, being vaccinated does not stop transmission of the virus. And they ordered the state of New York to pay back pay to all the people that got laid off and fired. So I think we need to bring more suits and others. If it's going to, listen, the New York State Supreme Court is about as liberal as it gets. So for them to have ruled this is going to go in other places. Even the California Supreme Court and other liberal state courts have pushed back now against these mandates. It's unfortunate that it took this long for them to grow a pair and do it, but the science is now so overwhelming that they have no choice. What transpired firing, in our case, many of the heroes that risked their lives during the pandemic that we were glorifying, right? We were saying our police officers, our EMTs, our doctors, our nurses, you're all our heroes. Oh, you don't want to get the jab, you're fired. You're a grandma killer, you're fired. So we need to hope more cases come through. I think the precedent is now being kind of set. And that's where we have to go with that. But that was a huge ruling today. I am ecstatic that it came down. I wish it came down sooner, but I am glad that those people are going to get their money, their back pay, and they have an acknowledgement, because the court basically said you were wrong. You should not have been fired. So I appreciate everything. And I will see you guys all next week. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week. We'll be a week out.
Song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. Last night I was on television. I was on a telephone rapidly rising and with I don't know. COVID has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's why it's reflected in the NHEI. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was the foot in the we're going to seize the ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah. NATO's purpose is to defend against aggression. Let me make that near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the hell are we? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm in prison. Where am I? No idea. I don't think as the idea that the political coverage of I want to thank and recognize Dr. John Kingerson. That song. I can't get this to function at all. My mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on here? Where the door? My mind's going blank now. I can't remember. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. What am I doing here? My mind's going blank now. Where am I headed? I keep forgetting I'm president. Where am I? No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. What's the song that is played where everybody is on the chair, everybody at going to my mind's going blank now. What's happening? What, I can't remember. I'm gonna lose track. My mind's going blank now. What are you talking about? What the hell's going on?